On today's podcast, we're ready to go. We got Brad Stevens, the architect behind the Boston Celtics championship run, but it's a little bit more than just this team winning. All the stuff that went into it, his transition from head coach to front office, the Butler stuff, and him just talking about his players. It's awesome. John Buccigross, we're talking hockey. The Panthers win Game 7. The story of this series, the turnaround for a franchise in Florida, and then the Edmonton questions, and we got life advice. Enjoy. It's a great time to have him on. Maybe we'd be asking draft questions if it weren't for the accomplishments of this season, but it's Brad Stevens, president of basketball operations for the Celtics. Congrats, and thanks for doing this. How are you?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
What's it like? What's it like to win a title?
Well, I think, it's funny. I've wondered that because I've been asked a lot over the last 15 years, how different would life have been if that shot versus Duke would have gone down, or, if we would have found a way to figure out how to stop those three guards from Connecticut. And I just think, it's as vanilla as this answer is going to sound, Ryan, it's not much different. Yeah, I went home, walked the dog, did laundry. We did have a parade, which was nice. But everything else is, and I think there's that actually makes you feel good, right? Because it's like, okay, all of the journey, all of the things you do with team, all of the people that haven't had a chance to experience this, obviously it is special to be a part of being the last team standing and winning, but it doesn't change who you are, and it doesn't change who, your guys are. And I said after, a couple days after, like, I don't think any more of Jaylen or Jason than I did 2 weeks ago. I just think they're special, and it's just kind of the way we are, I guess, that it's championship or bust in our society. And it's nice for those guys to kind of, if that's something to check off, that's something to check off. But at the same time, I think it just validates that being a part of a team is the most special part of it. The parade was pretty sweet, though. I will say this: the parade was maybe the coolest thing I've ever been a part of.
I was listening to Wick talk at the parade, and for a little background, and you probably know most of this, but like when I had moved back to Boston professionally, it was at the exact same time Wick and his group bought the Celtics, and it was Patriots, Red Sox nonstop on our radio station. And Wick came on, and he was smart about it. He was strategic about it, but it was also him expressing, like, we are Celtics fans. Okay, we're not some hedge fund group that just bought a team that was available here. We grew up with this. We are Celtics fans, and you'd think the 2008 title would just be the one that could never be surpassed. It's Celtics Lakers. It's the first one. But knowing that it took this long for the next one, I almost felt like there was an appreciation that he had because he knew what it would feel like, and they got there again. That you collectively all got there again. Did you pick up on any of that, knowing that you weren't around for the first one?
Yeah, I mean, I think people just understand how hard it is to be the last team standing. I mean, there's 30 teams in this league, and they're excellent. The players are great. The coaches are great. Front offices are filled with amazing people. Obviously, all kinds of resources from all the different ownership groups. So I just think how hard it is. And so to get back and be the last team standing again is something special. I think one of the things that's been fun for me personally, and when I first came here in 2013 was right after we traded Garnett and Pierce and Jason Terry and that big deal, and we weren't very good for a year, but then we got progressively better. And one of our goals, and Danny and I and the owners all talked about it, was how can we sustainably be in the mix? How can we put ourselves and give ourselves as many cracks at it? And, one of the reasons why you want to do that is because you want to have a chance to be the last team standing. But also the other reason why you do it is because you want to be damn good. It's no fun to go through the process of rebuilding or building. And how can you possibly do that? And I think the fun part about winning it this year is we have been in the mix, and it's proof that you can be in the mix and not and still and do so and get it done. And it doesn't take away from some of those other runs, but it certainly re-energizes everybody, because it is how hard this mountain is to climb.
Did you ever? I like how you told the story about Butler. Like you're so close, and how different do you think things would be? But
yeah, I'm not sure my life would be much different, Ryan. I'm pretty damn lucky as it is.
I think the reward is later on, and knowing that you're not going, yeah, I had a good run, but never got it done. Like now that moment will never exist for you.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, you say that, and it's funny because when you go on runs like that, hey, like if we played Duke 10 times, we may beat them a couple, like in that 2010 team. If we had a coach who wasn't a 33-year-old idiot, we probably would have beat them. Right. But the UConn game, we were on our last leg, and they were a little bit better than us. And, a couple of our early runs here, we were good, and we were awesome to coach, and we were a blast to be around, but we were ascending. We weren't quite, at the point we are now. But sometimes those things become, in the moment you realize how special those runs are. And then later on it becomes, well, those were just a couple more that were close. Right. And so I don't think we've ever lost too much perspective on that. I think in the last couple of years, when you get to the finals, when last year, those, we knew how good we were and how much of a chance we had. And it was good to get over that, I guess, over that hump is what we say. But yeah, those Butler teams are just as special to me finishing second as this team is finishing first.
Wow. Okay. So basically you're telling me that the UConn final was like the 17 Eastern Conference finals, and the Duke final was like the 18 finals.
I don't know. I'm not saying they all don't hurt. I'm just saying, as I kind of look and take a long view of it all, I think you have the perspective that, hey, you gave yourself a chance, but those teams played their hearts out to get to where they were, and you can't fault them for that.
So we're talking a lot of coaching here, and I remember when the transition from Ainge to you happened, you're going, okay, like this guy's been incredible as a coach, but is it that he needs a different approach to life, and he's just going to be in charge of everything? And how it just leads into the doubts, but like, he's a great basketball mind, and maybe people on the outside are wrong for going, well, he can only do this and he can't do that other thing. What was that transition like for you?
Well, I've been asked about it a lot recently. I think number one, it's so special to be a part of this organization, whether you are the head coach, whether you are in travel and equipment, whether you are sports performance or playing or analytics or whatever. It's just a special place to be. And I've never taken that for granted. I think coming off of the bubble, and then coming off of that next year where we weren't, we didn't have fans, and we started 2 months after we got back from the bubble. And you could kind of see we were all running on fumes. My son was a freshman in high school, and we weren't even allowed to go to games in Massachusetts because of the COVID rules. So I watched all of his games on streaming, and just being away from them from July 1st to October, and then going right back into another season, knowing he was a freshman, my daughter was a sixth grader. Part of this for me was, man, their time is flying. And, I wanted to try to make sure I was as big a part of that as possible. And as much as you try to do that in coaching or playing, that travel schedule during the season's real. Right. And it is hard to find the right amount of time to be dad. That was a part of it. I thought our team, I thought I, as a coach, whether it was that timing, whether it was just I had been in one place for 8 years as a coach, I thought I wasn't, I was burned out a little bit. And then at the same time, I felt like I really knew the team, and I really loved the people I work with, both players and people in the building. And so when we started talking about a replacement for Danny, when he decided to retire, Wick and Danny and Pags, they all went through a few names and probably called a few people. I don't know. And then ultimately came back and said, hey, what about, I had mentioned, if this doesn't go, this might be something I want to do down the road. Danny had talked to me about it. And then they came back and said, that's not a bad idea. And let's pursue that a little bit more. And we did. And here we are. And I think the benefit for me, Ryan, is I didn't lose anybody in the front office. So this front office is very smart. They've been through a lot. They were, taught by who I think's the best in Danny. And they helped me get up to speed on the things that I had to learn. And what I tried to do was bring my strength to the table. And that is just thinking about how teams function and operate. And some of the challenges that a coach faces when constructing a team. And so hopefully, as we all bring our strengths together, we can put a team together that is functional and gives ourselves a chance.
Because of the coaching background, but now having a different task here, being in charge of the roster, like how do you look at rosters now? How is there a difference between when you were just trying to get wins every night?
No, I very much go back to my time at Butler, because at Butler, our dream was always to get to we had been to a couple Sweet 16s, and it was always to get to the Final Four, right? And so, and ultimately win it. And I think the way that we figured to do it was we needed 4 players that if they transferred in that day and age, which now it's who the hell knows, but in that day and age, that everybody in the country would want them. And then surround those 4 with the best role players you could find. And when you're coaching in Indianapolis, in the state of Indiana, in the Midwest, with all the great high school coaching and all the great kids, it's easy to find those other 10 role players. Those guys are at every turn, all the shooting and all the, they grew up with the game. They've been doing 6 a.m. workouts their whole life. Like, that's easy. Finding the 4 game changers is hard. Here, you need more than 4. But it's the same concept, right? Like, surround your best players that everybody in the world would want on their team with guys that are perfect complements, and guys, and a lot of times for me, that's defensive versatility and shooting. But those are hard to find. You find guys that can do both of those things. There's not many teams that are going to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those guys.
So if I'm listening to you correctly, then I imagine there's a moment where you go to the staff and go, Drew Holiday's available.
Whoa, let's go.
Yeah. That's basically exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think the whole league knew that if Portland was to make a deal with Dame, that, they would have to take back some significant salary. And so you can start to do the math on what that might look like, and to be honest, I'd never thought it was going to be Drew, but when Drew became available, that was the kind of guy that obviously is a winning player on every team, and even beyond that, just an amazing. And I know people say this, just an amazing person. To me, my biggest fear with Drew in getting him was the same thing I worried about with Derek. They're such conscientious, unbelievable teammates who are about all the right things that it takes transition for people like that to feel comfortable in their environment, because they're thinking about everyone else. They're thinking about the family moving, the relationships they've left behind, all the important stuff that matters, all the stuff that makes them great is what they're thinking about. And it makes the transition hard. And so we knew that it was going to be like a shock to him. But man, he just came in and he was amazing, and just amazing as a teammate, amazing as a player, and truly played his best in the playoffs, as he kind of navigated and figured out how our team worked, how it all functioned together, how he could best find his footing, and how Joe wanted to do things. And he did a great job.
when I look through, once you take over, I would, it's a bit of a guess. So you finally get to be the GM, right? You're the president of basketball operations. You're in charge of all this stuff, and it's like, okay, we're scouting and we're doing all these things. Sometimes I wonder if your scouting staff is like, are we serious? We traded the pick again. But it was bold, and it's very easy for everybody after the fact to be like, oh, well, everybody knew Derek White was going to be terrific. I don't remember people understanding how special Derek White was, because I think you had to be paying attention to how he fit into all the different things that you're talking about. But flipping for Brogdon and then that becoming Drew, the Derek White deal, like improving just exactly what you're talking about, that 3 through 5, that 3 through 6, and then Porzingis, and having some move some pieces out. Was there ever a trade where you had a harder time at least getting there, where I'm like, I kind of want to do this? Was there one that stood out for you that you felt like you had more of an internal challenge?
Well, I think when you look at it, we've traded number 16 in the 2021 draft. I think we traded, or maybe a 2020 draft. We traded number 25 in the draft. We traded now the number 14 pick, the Golden State pick, that in the Drew draft. So the picks haven't been like, the ones you lose sleep over are the 28 swap and the 29 pick, because those are so far down the road, and who knows. But I think what gives you the chance to do that is having a foundation of Jaylen and Jason, who are 26 and 27 years old. And you have more, you feel like that's, more calculated, and more about what you might look like down the road than you would if they were 35 and 36 years old, right? But I do think they were all really hard, because you have to call or talk to people that you are upheaving their lives, right? So I can't tell you how hard it is. The pit in your stomach. You know that Kristaps Porzingis is excellent, but you're losing Marcus Smart. Drew is excellent, but you're losing Malcolm and Rob. And that's hard on them. And like, they played a huge role in us being here, and nobody thinks otherwise. And so I think that's the hard part for me. Trading, like trading the 25th pick last year for the 38th pick to get a few extra seconds. Who knows if that's a good move or not? But it felt like the right move to give ourselves a good player, and we got a good player in Jordan Walsh, and then also a chance to get some extra assets that we hopefully can use in trades to win at the margins when we have a chance to win. So that's, we'll make all those decisions independently, but trading people is a lot harder for me than trading picks.
And you're right, to your point about where those picks are. And I remember years ago when it was either getting the information, and I remember going to a Waltham workout, and Zarin shows me the chart that he's like, Ainge wanted you to see this chart about draft picks. And I was like, okay. And it's just this massive drop off of predictable production.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other times where, and the audience knows this because I brought it up far too often, but just Ainge going, you guys in the media, this cap space obsession that you have, like it's stupid. And he was nice enough to spend that time with me when I was there. And then when I look and think, I'm like, okay, so clearly Brad had spent hours and hours, countless hours, talking to Danny about roster construction and his side of the job and how that goes together. I just feel like you deserve a lot of credit for being bold from the jump. And I don't know if people going in the direction you have career-wise, it's really easy to say this after the fact. I just see a lot of people being like, I don't really want to do too much because I'm opening myself up to criticism and people waiting for it. Just wondering how much Ainge influenced very beginning of what you were doing.
Well, first of all, we wouldn't be able to do it if Danny didn't keep all of our, everything stocked, right? Like, and if Danny doesn't do the trade and get Jaylen and Jason, we're not in the position we're in. Like, and so he set us up in every which way. And I don't look at it as bold at all. Like, to be honest, Ryan, when I was I don't know if it was definitely lucky for me, but I look back at it, I probably wasn't a very good coach when I was named a head coach at 30 years old. But having been in this now and coaching in your hometown. And people ask me all the time, like, how much pressure was it to coach the Celtics? I felt it just as much in my hometown at a small school in the Horizon League. It's just part of it. And, but having been under that, lens where you're getting praise that you don't deserve and criticism you probably don't deserve for years and years and years, just makes it like, let's just build the best team we can. I don't really care what anybody says about it. Is it a good deal, bad deal? Is it helpful to us? Is it helpful to them? Like, I don't think we've done one deal that I didn't think was really good, reasonable, and smart by the other team. And that's because we're dealing with other front offices and people that are also, they've got all the charts you saw and they've got all these other pieces of information and they're going in their own paths, but they're making those decisions that are calculated and smart. And so we were lucky that the pieces all fit together. And that happened because, we have a super unselfish team. That's the part that was so fun for me this year, was just how much of a true team we were.
I want to talk about Tatum and Jaylen here because I know, and my world's obsessed with it. I'm guilty of it too. It's like, okay, so Tatum is this, and then he wins, and now he's this. And you said at the very beginning, it's like, I don't really think any differently of these two guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
But watching the playoffs and going, we know what happened to the opposition in the East with injuries, but specific to how Tatum was playing, I was like, okay, he's the defensive focus. He's got the toughest assignment every time. I think a player, even at his age, with his profile, knowing what's at stake here, all right, I've got to put up these kinds of numbers. Even though the shooting clearly could have been better for somebody like Tatum, I just felt like you have somebody in the finals playing basically point guard on offense and playing center on defense. What does not just his talent, but his understanding and probably the scar tissue of all the other stuff, what does that allow the rest of the team to do when he takes on that kind of role?
Well, and everybody focused on the finals, but he guarded Mobley most of this Cleveland series so we could switch. He guarded Miles Turner most of the Indiana series so we could switch. He guarded, and that's not easy, but part of that is, yes, he's got good size. Yes, he's gotten stronger, but he's also super smart and he's a great communicator. And so, you always talk about your bigs, traditional bigs, being people that can kind of direct and quarterback the whole defense because they can see everything and they've got to call out coverages. Well, Tatum's capable of all that. I'll never forget the one of the first preseason games we were playing when he was a rookie. We were playing Charlotte, and they ran just a traditional side pick and roll called wedge that everybody in the league was running at the time because Tony Parker just destroyed everybody on it. So everybody copied it and put it in their playbook, and he got scored on the first time. And the second time, without me saying anything, he made the adjustment that we would have made in his mind. That's the stuff that people don't see, right? And, when you talk about it, and it's funny you say that. I read an article yesterday that talked about how rare the era was that Jaylen and Jason are in because they've won a championship and what they've accomplished. It was rare a week ago. It was rare 2 weeks ago. It was rare 3 weeks ago. Like, Jason's had 50 in a game 7 against the Sixers when they were healthy, right? He had 46 on the road in Milwaukee in a game 6. When he was 19 years old, we were running every play for him in a game 3 on the road in Philly against a team that had won like 17 of 18 to finish the regular season. And he delivered us to a 3-point lead. Like, it's just because of the world we're in that I think that those guys are going to have to navigate the scrutiny. And like I say this all the time about like LeBron, those guys, they get the amount of scrutiny that they get. Just watch them and enjoy them. Like, they're so unique and so special. And it's easier for me to say that because I'm here and I guess because we won. But for the 5 people that are harsh on those guys, I think they turned the corner on Causeway the other day and probably forgot about that pretty quickly.
Jaylen's development is, I think, one of the most impressive single player development things that I've ever seen. because it's like, oh, wow, it's a little bit better than I thought. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, how much better is he going to get? And every single time I think I've had a limitation for him, he has gone through it. What has it been like seeing it firsthand?
Yeah, I think he is as good as I've ever been around at truly adopting like a mindset of I'm always going to try to improve, and that was from the get go, from the first draft interview with him to the first draft workout to getting, having a rookie year where he only played 17 or 18 minutes a game as the third pick, while other of the high picks were getting tons of stats and minutes and everything else. But we were a good team. And he just keeps getting better. No matter what you throw at him, he's a worker. If he has, an adverse experience, he's going to get up off the mat and work. If he has a great experience, he's going to get right back at it and work. He takes everything as a challenge. And he's very prideful. And he is both those guys are elite workers. And that's a big reason why they're where they are. But I thought we were going to be in a pretty good place when I walked up to Jaylen at breakfast a couple weeks before or a couple days before the finals. And he told me big 2 weeks. I was like, all right, we're good. Like, as a coach, you never feel good, but I was like, this dude's ready. Like he's coming. And he's had an amazing career. So I don't want to overstate the last couple weeks.
So I didn't know Joe Mazzulla. Like, I had no interaction with him. I knew of him certainly at West Virginia, and I'd heard good things about him. But I always kind of joked, like, I'm glad he was with Boston ahead of time, because if you didn't have anyone with any relationship with him, I don't know how that first interview would go. But the other thing, when he gets named to become head coach in the aftermath of this dramatic run of change, whether it was media or friends or whatever, it's just like, wait, this guy, they're just going to give him this team and it's like ready to win. And he's younger and all the doubt that comes with that you had to face as well. And I'm thinking like, okay, I've known the ownership group for like 2 decades. I would say top to bottom, like whenever I've been around anyone with the Celtics, I've never been like, how does that guy have that job? Like, I'm like, there's no way that they would just go, yeah, just let Joe Mazzulla do it because we don't know what we're doing. So I felt like there was some equity from the organization for those of us on the outside to trust it. But what was it about him that you knew that the rest of the other people, that the people in the hiring process understood about Mazzulla that maybe people without access to him did not know?
I just think he has all the qualities of a really good basketball coach. He's smart. He knows the game on both ends of the floor. He can teach it very succinctly. He can go out on the court and simplify an offensive or defensive game plan and do it in a way that is exceptionally well communicated. He is a great leader that thinks about things that matter. He talks about things that matter all the time. He has a set of action principles that he coaches to and that he believes helps teams be the very best that they can be. And and I know he does the work. Like there's a diligence there that is real, and it's his motor is. I mean, I think I had that, when I was 35, but I'm not sure I would have had that plus wrestling like alligators and doing whatever the hell else he does, right? But like he's a special guy, and last year he did a great job. We won 57 games, and we did so with guys missing some time and trying to navigate an unbelievably tough transition to start of the year. And so we went into the playoffs as a staff and even with the ownership group and said, listen, if we don't, if this doesn't go well, right, this is going to be an easy narrative. So let's not buy into that. This guy's special. He didn't even get a summer to prepare for this. And I thought he did a good job in year one, and I thought he prepared well and did another really good job in year two. The guy's just a good basketball coach, and beyond that, he's a guy that really cares about our guys, and he can lead. He can lead a group. It's pretty special.
Okay, last thing. I remember, one of the early lessons that I was taught was that even when you win, you have to come back and maybe be a little different, just to get people to not feel stale, which can be fair or not. That it'll be used against you if you weren't able to repeat, which is, to think of like, hey, you guys better repeat. It's just an easy thing to do. But roster wise, it's pretty much set. But how motivated are you to just, I don't know if it's greed. I don't know if it's just general concern that comes with the position that you have of feeling like there has to be some little tweak just from an energy standpoint.
Well, maybe we'll make a draft pick and that person can be a tweak. I don't know. I think that you have an opportunity to tweak and change your roster all the way up until February 10th or whatever it is. And so you don't always have to do those things in June. You don't always have to do those things in July. You have time to evaluate your team, evaluate your roster. We're going to be different right out of the gate next year simply because, we've got guys that, like Kristaps after his surgery, we don't know exactly when he'll be back, but he'll probably miss at least the very start of the season. And so that'll be a great opportunity for us to do things different and have to find different solutions and those types of things that come with it. And then we'll just evaluate our team like we always do. I think you're right, Ryan, but I also think that part of the reason why that is the case, that you want to tweak, that you want to do things different, is because the greatest obstacle will become human nature, right? And we know that with all the praise that we've gotten in the last week or two, the next couple of weeks or whatever, however long that lasts, it's all going to turn into some like real eyes on us and some real scrutiny. And we just kind of know that this cycle is coming. So how can we be all of the great character things that we were this year, bouncing back off the mat with a new team, and double down on that as a character trick, double down on that idea that human nature's in the way, the other 29 opponents are in the way, and we've got to be even better. When we develop, when we work out in the summer, we've got to know that's coming. When we compete for an Olympic team and we put our best foot forward with that, we got to know that's coming. And when we get to Abu Dhabi to play Denver in the preseason game, we got to know that's coming. And, I'm glad we're playing Denver. Like, we got an unbelievable respect for them, and to play a couple preseason games in Abu Dhabi, I think that'll be super fun. We'll be right back at it in 3 months or whatever, and get a chance to, like, right out of the gate, be prepared. We're going to be the first game of the NBA last year, like the team that won it always is. And we're probably going to have one of the studs out east. Right. And so, we're not going to have time to think about how great we are. We're not going to have time to worry about, those small roster tweaks that everybody wants to give us a little jolt. We're going to have to bring it. And that's the fun part about it. And this team has done that all the way through. I've heard their toughness question. I've heard all that, but listen, you don't get to where these guys have taken us before this year without having some grit and some toughness to you.
Well, I know that as you've expressed with us here, like still thinking about those Butler moments and thinking about some of the other playoff stuff with the Celtics and just how driven you are. And I mean, there's probably Celtics fans listening to the end of this right now, just getting pumped up as you're talking about the start of next season. But a life in basketball, it's a dream job, but it's also almost like this task, this honor that you are in charge of for millions of fans in that part of the country. And I think everybody knew leading up to this and listening to you now that that's something you take incredibly seriously as a massive responsibility. So thanks for the time and congrats, Brad.
No, I appreciate it. And you could not be more true. I mean, you get in that parade and you turn the corner on the causeway and you see all those people. And if you didn't know it before, you know it now. Like better not screw up the draft. Right. That's what I was thinking as we turned that corner. There's a lot of people wearing a lot of Celtics gear and they're moving on to next year pretty soon. And we should too.
This class, if you whiff on 30, I don't know. I'm not going to get mad at you about it.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Ryan.
If you're listening to the pod, I don't talk a ton of hockey, but you know that I was locked into the Stanley Cup final and really a lot of the rounds of the playoffs. Even went to the Bruins-Panthers, and I saw it firsthand. I was like, man, this Panthers team seems pretty good. And to help us break down a win for the Panthers, avoiding the 3-0 blown lead to the Edmonton Oilers, this guy who I've known for a while back in our ESPN days, a big part of the hockey coverage, John Buccigross. What's up, man? It's good to see you.
Happy to be here. Big fan of the pod. Listen on my long drives from Massachusetts to Connecticut to do my occasional sports center. So really a big. I've learned so much, sports and non-sports. More non-sports from your podcast. You've been such a conduit to authors and other podcasts. It's really enriched my life, and I'm serious when I say that.
Yeah, I kind of thought you were messing with me, but you were so earnest about it with the closing of that sentence that I was like, maybe he's serious about this. We have a lot of authors. We've got a few banked and ready to go when I can take a little time off. So thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about, there's kind of like three different things I want to do here with this story. Let's talk about the story of the actual series itself. We all know that Florida gets up 3-0. And again, just as somebody who doesn't really quite understand, I didn't feel like Florida was demonstrably the better team. I felt like there were some Edmonton turnovers that were extremely costly. I didn't think Skinner necessarily was the problem. And then it just kind of turns. And you would think with Edmonton's talent, like it makes sense that it would turn. But how did you see the series playing out through those first 6 games?
Yeah, Edmonton should have won game 1. Absolutely the better team by far. That one will sting them for a long time. And then they should have won game 3. It was a bad 6.5 minutes in the second period that lost game 3, their first home game. So really, they should have been up 2-1. And of course, at worst, down 2-1 after 3. And that changes everything. They exhausted so much energy once you're down 3-0, truly backs to the wall, truly life or death, fight or flight situation. And that got them an easy win. And then one more carryover win, and then a home win, which was easy. And then that set them up for the challenging Game 7, which really does stand alone. I think there is some momentum in hockey series. I think there's a reason why NBA, they don't come back from 3-0, baseball only once. Hockey's a blood sport, and once you get moving in one direction, you emotionally can go one way for confidence and lack of confidence the other. And I think that's what happened, and that's what set them up. But Game 7 is such a standalone. That's why it has happened occasionally in hockey, because you still have some carryover, but especially if you go back to the other team's home rink and the team that lost 3 in a row is back home, that's their best chance to win.
So what happened last night? Why Florida?
They got whatever they did, whether not practicing on Sunday, they got to a fresh start. And like I said, Game 7's a fresh start, because now the pressure's back on Edmonton, because if you don't finish it off, all that work meant nothing. And Connor McDavid still doesn't have a cup. And even though you're a teammate on Edmonton and you want a cup just as badly as he does, Warren Fogle wants a cup as badly as Connor McDavid does. But because the media focuses on Connor McDavid's first cup, we assume that he wants it more than Warren Fogle. But that's not the case. But I'm sure Warren Fogle still feels that pressure of Connor McDavid winning his first cup, because he's a teammate, doesn't want to let him down. He probably feels like he's part of his legacy in some way. And so he probably felt the pressure, and all those other guys felt the pressure. So there was definitely some early tension from the Oilers. I thought that, funny, I did an ESPN radio hit the day of the game, and I go, I just think the Panthers are going to get an early power play. I thought they're going to put Montour back on the power play, and he might score that goal. They kept Larson on the power play. They didn't score in the power play, but they scored soon after. And that's what a power play can do, any power play in any game of the regular season. The puck stays in the zone. So even though it becomes 5-on-5, it's still like a extra credit extended power play time. And then they score. They get that deflected goal, amazing goal. And now all the pressure is off them. Their first lead since Game 3. Now the entire atmosphere is different. That initial standalone Game 7 I talked about was already there. Then they have a lead on a really awesome goal that probably felt like, ooh, maybe this is our night goal, like one of those kinds of goals. And then they just kind of carried that throughout, and Edmonton was slogging uphill really the rest of the way.
Okay, so from that point on, though, as Edmonton ties it up, and if I'm just watching and going, okay, who seems in control? There's probably a 10-minute stretch there at the start of the second period where it looks like Edmonton's running a basketball 3-man weave, and they're just cycling and cycling, and they look like they're completely in control of the ice, tilted to their end. And yet you're waiting for this moment. And I imagine that playoff hockey, like you start realizing in front of the net, like everybody's just kind of condensed and they're not taking as many chances. and all the shots that you think are there, that when you see Bouchard get ready and you're like, how come he's not shooting, or how come McDavid's spinning away and not like, these guys realize there's no lane right now. There's no lane.
Nope.
So they're in control of the puck, and it could probably be frustrating to some. Like, can't you just get the puck on the net? And I wonder what that is. Is it, hey, you can't be this cute, or they're trying to find a much better opportunity instead of just flinging it towards four bodies, knowing it's never going to get through anyway?
Yeah, it's the great mystery of hockey, why some games there's room and some games there isn't. Now, obviously, and I talked about it earlier that same day as well. I pictured game sevens, and why they're usually the under is because they are like a wet football game, a muddy football game. It's a slog. And that's the metaphor that I use for a game seven Stanley Cup final game, is that it's a slog. The officials do let a few of the hook and holds go a little bit, nothing egregious. And the players, for some reason, are so focused defensively, staying in front of their man, using any adrenaline that they have to stay in front of their man. It's a six goalie game at that point. And it really was a six goalie game. Both teams, all five guys trying to play street hockey goalie, and then the one goalie, the actual goalie, in the net. And yeah, there just wasn't a lane there. Maybe once in a while bounce it towards the net, probably. But when you're that good too, and you're one backdoor pass to Draisaitl or Zach Hyman for that tap in goal, that's such a high percentage slam dunk kind of field goal percentage shot. They just kept looking for that and looking for that. And even though you mentioned they had the puck a lot and they were kind of sweet Georgia Browning it, they didn't quite have that grade A where they had any kind of space where you could really lean in and rip one or have Bob one-on-one. It just didn't quite happen. The man-on-man defense of the Panthers was just unbelievable. They just found their game that way, and they made it a slog, which they had to do. And like I said, Edmonton, the regrets from game 1 and 3 eventually is going to catch up with you. They still might have got a bounce in at the end of regulation and then take it to overtime and win. But again, that's a fine line, and you're playing with fire once you let it get to that point.
Reinhart to make it 2-1, ultimately the game winner. I'm just asking, does the defenseman play that wrong? Does he get towards the center a little bit instead of cutting off the shot opportunity?
Absolutely, especially a right-handed shot. He's got to realize that he's got to come over a little bit, force the shooter to make a pass, try to block the pass, and disrupt him a little bit more. You can't give a guy with momentum like that to shoot a 15-footer, and that was the difference. Reinhart, free agent to be this summer, amazing year. Good for him to cap off this amazing year to get that goal. A special season, and sometimes guys in the special regular season, it carries over, and it did for him.
Okay, let's talk the story of the Panthers, because this is a team that the hockey world has made fun of for a long time, which it deserved to be made fun of. I was looking up some numbers this morning. In 2006, their average, not paid tickets, the average number of free tickets per game was 4,100 per game. They had a deal where if you had a Florida license, it was called the First Timer Program, where you just get free tickets to the games if you had a Florida license. When LeBron went to the Heat in 2010, they had $6 tickets to games in the upper deck. Wayne Huizenga sold this team in 2013, and he's somebody who wanted to pull the Charlotte Bobcats move, sort of, and wanted to name them the Florida Blockbusters after the video chain empire. So we know that it was a 2.5 decade run without playoff wins. They get all the way there last year, come up short, of course, in the end of the final, and then win this. What does this mean for a franchise that people have, I would say, probably want in Quebec for the last 20 years?
I remember I went to a game about 2014, took my parents over. They were down in Naples, so we drove over Alligator Alley, and we get to the game. At that time, I was driving a Lexus ES300. Shout out Hoffman, Lexus of Hartford, Connecticut, and got a great deal on it, the Pebble Beach model. And I pull in to pay for my parking. I pull in for my parking, and they go, "Hey, your parking's free." I go, "What?" "Yeah, Lexus is kind of one of our sponsors. So if you're in a Lexus, you get free parking," which is kind of funny as it is. That alone is funny. But the guy in the Pinto is paying for parking, but the guy in the Lexus, you don't have to pay. So I go back this year, take my son over. He's living down in Florida, and it costs us $75 to park. So it's like, that tells you how much it's turned in Florida. And yeah, they had embarrassing lower bowl highlights on SportsCenter when there's 48 people there. We even saw it in Game 7. A lot of those fans sold their tickets probably pays for their season ticket next year by selling their Game 7 tickets to Edmonton Oilers fans. The lower bowl was heavy Edmonton Oilers in Game 7. And so a lot of people probably figured, let's cash out. And a lot of all teams, a lot of fans will do that. They might go to half, or they might just, it's too high a figure. They can't pass it up, and they'll watch it on TV. So, and that happens. So, yeah, it's come a long way. Really good ownership now from top to bottom. The way they market down there. Still not a great location, perhaps. It's basically in a mall, right off the Sawgrass. And I don't know if it's ever going to really stick, but they're going to be good for another 5-7 years. So certainly this is the time. If it's going to work, it's going to be now.
Bill Zito, the man in charge, because you look at the coaching changes, younger players not working out, but then it looks like, okay, they get Bobrovsky in the big free agent signing. And I know Zito wasn't there for all of these things, but as a former agent, now team executive, what did you see from him in this roster construction to get to the point of the last 2 years?
Yeah, he built his own agency, and of course, he was really grinding for an NHL job for a long time. He was working close with Blake Geoffrion, the great college player at Wisconsin, Hobey Baker winner. And, one of their first moves they did when they were hired, because Blake was with them at the time, he's not anymore, but they went out and got Patrick Hornquist. And he's one of those guys that will, eat pucks, practice all day. He used to practice in Nashville for Pekka Rinne, trying to distract him. And these guys are Shea Weber shooting slap shots at his face. This is practice, and he's trying to, get in the way and screen and tip, taking a beating. And that's what they kind of wanted to establish. You're right. They already had Barkov, which was a great sign. Most people didn't think they would draft him originally. They didn't have him second overall, but they identified him. Again, that's the previous regime. Yeah, they probably overpaid Bobrovsky. That was a laughable contract that everybody made fun of. But of course, Zito's grand move was obviously getting Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, that changed everything when they were able to identify a young player who didn't want to be there anymore, just like Jack Eichel. Kind of interesting. Back-to-back years, a young American's everything. How his dad has raised his sons and really instructed them in the knowledge and the guts of the game is one of the most remarkable sports stories, I think, in all of sports, but especially hockey. Those boys are perfect. They do everything right. I'm sure the next move now is get Brady to America somewhere out of Ottawa. I guarantee they're already thinking, how can they do that? Just like when Matthew was in Calgary, where and how can we get Matthew to the States and be in a position to win the Cup? I guarantee their next step now it's Brady's turn. How do we make this happen?
As if last night wasn't tough enough for the Canadian listeners hearing that stuff.
I know.
So I always like looking at things and going, okay, because something is happening doesn't mean something's actually happening, right? Mm-hmm. And so this Cup drought continues for Canada all the way back to my guy Leclerc with the Canadiens. And look, a puck bounces the other way. Reiner doesn't score, who knows? Yeah. And then it means it's all over. But is there a reason this drought? Is there anything to this? Because it still feels like there could have been all these other moments where the drought would just be over and we wouldn't have these grand theories of why we're on 3 decades of this.
Yeah, Johnny Vermont. Well, certainly, in the '90s we had the real weak Canadian dollar, so teams are really struggling. They're in a tough situation. Eventually, we're paying all the players in U.S. funds, and even last night, you have a heavily taxed Canadian situation against a tax-free state. It's just the way that Florida is able to get guys to take a little bit less because of the tax savings, and now, I mean, the new practice rink is right in Fort Lauderdale. These guys can go to practice in their flip-flops and golf carts. It's going to be a free agent destination. They're going to be good for a long time. Edmonton, is the most northern city in the NHL. You can't get free agents to go there. If you do, you overpay to keep them there. Girlfriends don't want to go there. Wives don't want to live there. And so it just makes it really tough from a climate perspective. Now, Toronto certainly is a great cosmopolitan city, shouldn't be a problem. They've had great teams, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump. But the other markets, it is challenging to get free agents. But I do think it's somewhat cyclical. Vancouver's coming, Montreal's coming, Edmonton's still going to be a player for the next 3 to 4 years. Calgary's in a rebuild, and Toronto, they're still kind of there. So they are set up now, I think, to where this next run, they have a legitimate chance here. But again, we'll see. Will these free agents go there? Will they play there? Or will they, as these warm climate American cities with great tax situations continue to improve and now have winning teams, winning programs. The benefit side by side, it's pretty obvious to a lot of young 26, 27, 28-year-old men.
I want to finish with McDavid, so I'm not going with Draisaitl before McDavid because of priority. I just think it's a better place to finish. But as much as I love watching McDavid just skate, I was sitting next to a former NHL guy last night watching the game. McDavid had a play on the right side, I think in the third period, where he basically kind of jumped backwards while two guys whiffed on him. And it's those little moments that lead to nothing. I mean, it may have led to an opportunity, but that particular play, nothing happened. But it was just like my buddy just yells out gross that anybody could even physically do these things. So there's a visual joy to McDavid that is really in like the rarefied era. I think of like prime Pedro of just going, I can't believe he's in a league with all of these other guys making, or Randy Moss, early Randy Moss, where you're just think all of these stud NFL defensive backs, and he makes them look this stupid. So even if McDavid isn't necessarily scoring, but like the point is 0 points now in game 6 or 7 for him. Yeah. But Draisaitl, who has, I think, the third most playoff points since 16, 17 in the league. The visual joy that I get out of watching him is these just passes that it feels like nobody else really sees, and the way he sets up other people on top of all of the scoring. And for him to go through this massive drought, 0 goals the last 9 playoff games, was there something in particular about him that you saw that felt different to lead to that kind of lack of production?
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is just a lack of energy on how much they played the last few years and how much ice time they have and playing for the last 9 months. Maybe it just took a little edge off their game, a little love away from the game, that it became really tiresome and cumbersome and just so monotonous almost, even though the stakes are so big and it is so exciting at times. But there was probably almost that numb feeling sometimes athletes get at every level, whether you're high school all the way to professional. Sometimes there's like a numb ringing in your head where you're at the free throw line. You can't even hit it between the rim. It's like you just lose your touch for a day or two. And it just seemed like those guys were just exhausted from the battle and from the wear and tear and fighting back during the regular season. Remember, they had a bad start. So when you fight back to get in, that takes a toll. This all takes a toll. Florida didn't have that toll really all year, and they kind of just had a nice little simmering cruise down the highway at 80 miles an hour, just kind of where, Evans is going 45 in traffic. Then they're going 110 for a couple of months, and then they're back down to 50, and now they're cruising for a while. And so I just think both those guys had a wear and tear, because it does not explain, like you said, that lack of production.
If McDavid were in the NBA, today would be the worst. The week would be the worst.
It would.
How is he treated in NHL circles, considering his greatness, the talent that is so obvious, and yet this disappointing end to what would have been a historic comeback?
Yeah, this is a big hit. I mean, this is a big hit to go pointless in games 6 and 7. Yeah, you're right. That's the thing about him. A lot of hockey players, you need to know the game or the subtleties to appreciate that. But he's Barry Sanders meets Brian Boitano meets Randy Moss. Like you said, just different. You can see it. You don't have to know hockey to say, wow, that's the best guy. And that's rare for hockey, because the fastest guy isn't always the best guy. Warren Fogle looks like Connor McDavid out there sometimes, but Connor McDavid passes like he's Adam Oates, but he skates like he's Pavel Bure. Like, that's a combination we've never seen in the league before. And you're right. And for him to go pointless in 6 and 7, it's a bad look. I know hockey's a different sport. It's low scoring, and you're not going to get a lot of chances. But still, he's going to take a big hit even in Canada. And although from a story perspective, you're right, it's probably the best ending to get Florida their first cup, and to continue this A-Rod, LeBron, and in hockey, Steve Yzerman search for the first cup.
The last thing I would say, McDavid, because I like, maybe I'm just more comfortable with the basketball analogies, but like the basketball star that is tasked with this kind of responsibility, like we can see them actually take the shots and make or miss them.
Yep.
And especially in those last couple minutes, those last few possessions where these legacies are decided. And when you're watching McDavid, I think if you're casual about it, you're like, well, why can't he just do these things? And you're like, well, those opportunities are not there unless there's something that I'm not seeing. Like, would First Take NHL say he just needs to shoot more? Like, what is fair about his approach to these last couple games, or is fairness actually, in fact, being incredibly fair, realizing, hey, it's not like he doesn't understand what he's supposed to be doing. It's just the opportunities do not present themselves.
No, for sure. No, but yeah, I think the shooting more was a fair criticism. Some people said he was hurt, and whether it's a wrist or an oblique, but when he did shoot, it looked pretty hard to me. And we only need 4 shots a game. That's a lot of shots for him. 4 shots. Now I know attempted shots is a little bit higher number, but he only had 8 goals in the postseason. And goals are the most important stat in hockey. You have to score goals, and I know during the regular season, I think he got caught up in the 100 assist thing. So he was passing, everywhere like a basketball player, passing to get the triple double. I think he was passing to get 100 assists because, it just has been done so few times. And that kind of carried over to the playoffs a little bit where, Zach Hyman had a career year. It worked all year long, and Draisaitl on the backside for the one-timer and Bouchard downhill from the point. That all worked. But I really do think he needed to attack the middle and attack and shoot those wrist shots high on Bob, get rebounds. And I do think, although I do really think last night at the end, he did really try to exert himself and try to find any way possible to tie that game. But again, he's worn down after a long season. This team has 6 goalies out there, and they defended very, very well last night. They really did. Edmonton needed that game to be at home last night, as it turned out. They used so much energy first in game 4 to prevent a sweep, fly down to Florida, and then game 6, you knew they were going to win that one. And because I used the analogy of the 86 ALCS when the Red Sox were down 3-1 and they came back and they won that game with a Dave Henderson home run. You knew when they came back to Boston that was over. The momentum was going to carry. They would win those 2 games easily, and they did because it was Fenway Park. Just like Edmonton would have been that special kind of place. That would have carried them to another Game 7 win if there was a 2-3-2 format in the NHL. Which probably shows how unfair that is. That shows how unfair the 2-3-2 format is, right? Because Edmonton wins those last 2 games at home, no doubt. And Florida is awarded Game 7 with their regular season, and that, to me, was the difference.
Yeah, it was awesome. I hope there's a bump. I hope there's some kind of carryover for this.
Yeah.
Because I think you guys are all great on the hockey coverage, and I love the sport. I just don't necessarily always have the time. But let's do a preview. All right, so we'll write it down in pen. You and I will do an NHL preview before next season, all right? It's going to be here quick.
I appreciate you, Ryan.
All right. Thanks, Bucci.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
The email address is lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. We have Steve. We have Kyle in more St. John's gear, which we'd love to see.
He got his big man. We're a complete team now.
I know, huh? Can you even pronounce that guy's name?
Yeah, Ruben Prey.
Nice work.
Wow.
Nice work.
6'10",
I saw the
Portuguese.
Yeah. There was a year there with Mully where it was literally a Benetton ad of players. This is pre-Kyle. I was just like, wait, who's this guy? But St. John's is a national, well, it's not it's a worldwide brand. So I'm very excited about the Johnnies this year. Okay. Let's get to it. We all have a smile on our face because I'm excited about this first one. The title is, quote, "I won't be alphaed like that in my own home." So let's dig in. Hi, guys. Love the pod. I have a question that I think the group can help with. A friend had a few couples over at his house for dinner last weekend. After we had been there about a half hour, one of the guys got up without saying anything, turned the thermostat from mid-70s, it was a bit toasty, down to mid-60s. Josh, I guess we're just going to say the guy's name, whose house it was, absolutely went off on him. It was screaming about how weird and inappropriate it was for someone, his direct quote, to, quote, fuck with another man's thermostat. And later said directly to me that he, quote, won't be alphaed like that in my own home. Yesterday, I was just saying his name here, Josh asked me if I think he overreacted, and I had no idea what to say. He wanted to make sure the other friend knew how inappropriate it was, but I can't stop laughing at it. Is it a big deal to adjust someone's thermostat? Is that something that warrants an apology? So, kind of two-pronged here, gang. Mid-70s. Let's just say for the record, mid-70s is toasty.
Yeah, that's.
You could have said something first, instead of just. It is an alpha move to go up there and just in front of everybody and just turn the dial. I will say, if you did this in my dad's house, Joe Ceruti would not allow that. He's a very strict. Like, I think the dads. Like, I'm a dad now, but I don't really feel this way. They were very strict on the thermostat. Like, we're talking like lock boxes on those things at times. So
it's like I think they have. Someone's fucking with it. Yeah.
But mid-set, I think you could have just said something. The guy could have said something first, but it is kind of funny. I'm actually, for the emailer's sake, I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, I think your dad would have said it in a cooler way than you don't. I won't be alpha like that. I mean, that's the part that everyone remembers. It's not that he got up and just did it. Do I think he overreacted? Yes. But when you put it like that, it sounds like it's in some sort of like rule book that everyone gets that I didn't get. Like, you don't, it's like you don't reach into another man's fridge. You don't fuck with another man's thermostat.
You don't touch another man's wife. That's right up there with it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like one of those commandments. But I think, like, I do this when I go to my grandma's house. I just go right to the thermostat and put it how I like. I'm not proud of it. I didn't expect to be sharing that with you guys today, but she likes it toasty, and I just won't have it.
That's different.
And, women like it toasty. All right. This isn't breaking news.
Yeah. So I just go and I pop it down to like 68, 69. It's usually up around 75. So, do I think it's an overreaction? Yes. But it sounds like this guy has really strong feelings to where it's like in his core principles. And now you can just laugh at being alpha in his own house. And that's maybe he'll learn not to make a big deal out of those.
Kyle. Yeah. I mean, he was. So the alpha move is not to be a man to have your thermostat set at 75. Okay, unless you have some circulatory issues. But I think there's a lot of married men listening to this right now being like, if that's the case, then I've been alpha every day of my life since I got married.
Right.
Because once again, Men Are From Mars, that book that my roommate in college gave to a girl to read while she was staying with me for a week in college, which was one of the worst moves of all time, because then she just would read chapters and then ask me questions. And I was like, dude, I didn't know this at the time, but I just want to be like, I'm 21. I'm a fucking moron. Okay. So stop asking me about what any of
your
this
buddy
stuff means.
gave the girl you were seeing that book at the time. Sounds like you kind of got alpha there.
What is that book?
Oh yeah, Kyle. This was a big deal. This book was a big deal.
Is it like The Game, but for women or something, or what?
No, it's just Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And it was a huge deal in the 90s. And everybody kind of felt like now we're all going to get along better because we can understand each other. That did not happen, I don't believe.
No. Okay. Still figuring it out.
Yeah. So I don't know, for whatever reason, why my college roommate was reading that while we were seniors in college is its own weird story now that I think about it. I think he'd gone through a bad breakup and then was trying to figure it out while he also went up on an epic tear because he had been the good guy of the group with a serious girlfriend that he cared a lot about. And that went on for like 3 years. And then once he became a senior and got dumped, he was just completely unleashed. But for whatever reason, he was also reading this book, which somebody else had to have given him. And then this girl that was visiting me that I was dating, she just didn't have anything to do because she's in a house like 6 idiots. And my friend was like, oh, you should check out this book if you're bored today. Well, Ryan probably doesn't go to class anyway. And so then she would read parts of the book and then ask me questions about like where my head was at with certain things each and every fucking night. And I went to him. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I don't know. She was bored. I was like, well, guess what? She's not bored now.
Yeah. Can you give her like a chicken soup for the soul book? Come on, something a little lighter.
Yeah. How to Tell He Doesn't Like You. Like this is a good book. So anyway, the thermostat issue in itself, I think there are things that are line crossers, and I think this is a line crosser, and I kind of like it. I think the guy who turns the thermostat down just completely unprompted 30 minutes into being at somebody's house, like how close of friends are they? Like you better be pretty close friends. Because I also don't know if it's an alpha move to do that, or is it being a little only childish, perhaps?
Totally
a little narcissistic.
Yeah, that guy double dip in the queso, like he bites a piece of the chip and then dips it back in. That guy's he's a little entitled. You know,
that guy
I'd like to know more about that guy.
Right. It wasn't an alpha move like I'm doing this because I need to take a stand. He's just like, I'm doing it because it's what I want to do. I always do what I want to do. Right. That's more like what it is.
Feels because I think most of us would just sit in uncomfort, or maybe if you were friendly enough with the person, you may go like, hey, what are we doing here? just a simple, what are we doing? Or like, hey, it's
Damn
good to be
towel,
in Phoenix. Yeah, it's just have a little fun with it. You got to warm up instead of just standing up at another guy's house and turning down his thermostat, being like, this is the temperature I desire. So I think that's a pretty bold, almost /asshole type move. I think there are other things that are in this category. I didn't like when somebody messed with my radio, although there were times somebody needed to turn my radio down. I'll give you a perfect example. Post-college, still in goon phase. We were playing in a charity golf tournament. I think we were all like 23. We had to get from downtown Boston out to like west of 128, and we didn't have enough cars. Nobody was going to organize taxis, free, obviously, ride service. And so Juvenile's Ha had just come out. I, of course, had the CD and said, load up in the monster truck. I can take a ton of you guys. The guys got in the back of the truck. And then a guy who, at that point, we didn't like each other. And I cranked up Ha as we pulled out of Boston, and everybody was loving it except for him. And he turned off my radio.
Not down, off.
Haven't talked since. Ceruti?
No, I'm just trying to think of. I had a buddy in college who we were making a Taco Bell run, and they got into some sort of like argument on the way there. And the guy driving was like, well, if you don't believe, I forget what the argument was about, but he was like, you could just get out of my car right now. So the guy got out of the car, walked back to our apartment, and then took his mattress and put it outside. We came back. He's sitting there in the dark with the guy's mattress on the outside. And so sometimes, I don't know, the moral of the story is, man, sometimes you just don't, it's, people are going to do what they're going to do. You got to, maybe this guy was a wild card. I don't know. Things happen. Like, we said this was, what, 20-year-old, 20 or early 20, something like that. Like, this probably doesn't happen in your 30s, but fresh out of college, maybe guys are still feeling a little bit fresh. Like, I wouldn't say I would have done something like this, but I would have certainly said something if it was hot.
Mattress outside. That's inconvenient. That's really, it's not just like you go pick up your laptop and bring it in. You're like, can you guys help me with this?
So what happened after that? There was a lot of other tension. Guy's mattress.
Yep.
That's
yep.
pretty
We
bold.
had to help him put the mattress back in. They didn't.
I'm sure he didn't use a mattress bag either. It's probably some stuff on the,
no, it was sheets and all.
Some smudges.
Yeah, but they didn't fight.
As a guy who just had mattresses delivered, I was kind of like, so what do we do? We just try to ruin one side of it when we bring these in?
He just had the rage strength. He was so mad that he just ripped a full size mattress out the door by himself. Didn't even need movers.
The guy that turned my radio off,
though, right?
He also used to go to McDonald's by himself.
Sit at McDonald's or just go and pick it up?
No, it'd be like 6 guys sitting around. He would just leave, go to McDonald's, then sneak up the stairs and go in his room and eat it.
Oh.
Instead of being like, hey, does anyone want to go for a ride and get McDonald's with me? Mm-hmm. Like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Maybe he was ashamed.
Nope.
I don't know. When you're one of the 2 car guys in the group and there's like 10 dudes, sometimes you're like, I got to get out of here. And I'm not telling anyone where I'm going because someone's got to go to the fucking drugstore and then someone's got to go here. And I'll admit to sneaking off once or twice, but it wasn't like just for food.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you had deals going down. So
business, yeah.
Selling knives used. You can't have other guys there. Like you said, you were showing up alone. I told you no other people.
Got to meet some dudes from the Mohawk tribe. Get a good deal on some Brave cigarettes.
You said you'd come alone. Okay. I think we covered. God, that's just so good. It's so good. The headline alone. This is sort of, well, I don't know if that one's as important. It's sort of a general observation, but it may be helpful. We have time. All right. Hey guys, it's a long time, first time, not a gym guy now, washed up in high school, washed up high school athlete. Okay. Washed up in high school would be very early completion. Yeah.
Man, dude.
Like
Baby Hercules.
I was done sophomore year.
I peaked in 5th grade.
Ceruti, you got excited for that one.
I see those Instagram, like they're not Instagram posts, but it's like they want you to click on it so that I think it's Twitter actually. They're like, remember Baby Hercules? See where he is now. You'll be shocked.
Oh, yeah.
That guy peaked in high school, it sounds like.
Yeah. He always had car keys like in 8th grade. Like, what the fuck is going on there? That would be an interesting show to find people. Just maybe that's the entire show, a documentary. I mean, Netflix would probably say yes to it. Like, I peaked in 5th grade.
I was the one kid who could do a backflip.
Yeah. I mean, it would suck because I don't know that any studio or network would pick up something without any stars involved whatsoever. But that's kind of the whole point.
By definition, there's no stars.
Yeah, but you just get like Nick Lachey to host it. Boom, done. Somebody like, that's what you do.
Here, Terry Crews. I watched a clip on X the other day where I don't know what the person on America's Got Talent was doing. It was maybe some sort of magic trick. And I'll admit, every now and then I can fall for a magic trick. And
was it the girl that changed clothes like 90 times?
It might have been that one because that one was in the mix lately.
Wow. Terry was into that.
Yeah. So it was just so funny the way those shows are edited because it's like, all right, we've got the judges, we've got crowd shots, we have the actual performer with this. And then somebody's just in the director's room, the control room going like, get to Terry Crews. And they have the camera like right over his left shoulder and Terry Crews turns to him. It's like, whoa. And that's it.
He's doing like the cheeseburger Eddie dance from Longest Yard.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking like, what a great gig. That's 7 figures.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Terry, can we just cut away to you like mid action and just give us like a whoa? And he's like, yeah, fucking do that. Can we do like, let's film 40 of them. I'll change my blazer and then you can just cut them in. I don't even have to show up. Okay. All right. So this guy's not washed up in high school, but he's a washed up high school athlete. So no recent numbers to share. I am the guy my friends call when they need help moving mattresses. Hey, Ceruti.
There you go. No guy.
This guy millennial. Fuck yeah.
I know. We didn't even do this on purpose. NBA comp is Boris Diaw because everybody knows himself. Big man who isn't afraid of running a little offense and volume shooter who isn't afraid to shoot it through a slump. All right. We have a large friend group left over from college and now live in a mid-large southern city. All right. So I think the parentheses mean to leave these things out. Thank you for me sort of figuring. I guess I'm thanking myself for figuring out the stupid part. For the most part, all of us have coupled up, are in our mid-20s. Most of us are married, engaged, in serious relationships, flanked by a couple of single guys who keep the group interesting. We're a tight-knit group who meet for happy hour every Friday at the same place for years. What a cool. This guy's, be psyched about that, man.
You got it made.
I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, seriously. All right. So I think it's a Southern thing too. I do think the Southern thing is like, let's get together and have some old fashions.
So those guys' wives are like, when, Carol's trying to set up a dinner, is like, well, Fridays, he can't do Fridays because he drinks with his buddies. I just can't imagine my wife saying that to her friends. Like, well, he needs his Fridays, but, I guess maybe it's a regional thing.
Probably tough to get the Fridays and Tuesdays.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
It seems, I would say based on some of the intel we get that it's not like you're not allowed to do anything. Fair?
Oh, 100% fair. But I usually try to do it while she's working.
Okay, sounds good. Earlier this summer, we went on my bachelor trip with the exception of one core guy who had an immovable conflict. Let's call him Mac, not his real name. The trip was lighthearted. Golf, drinking, hanging out at the lake, just a great group of guys hanging out. Little did I know that two of the guys decided to spice up the final night, I guess you could say note, with the help of some exotic dancers. The girls aren't really my thing, but I was a good sport and a good time was had by all. Nothing crazy happened, just dances and games. Nothing sketchy. Games.
What kind of games?
Shoots and ladders.
Playing
all right,
Risk.
so
yeah.
Risk. God damn it, Ceruti.
This is where the problem comes in. Mac was catching up with one of the guys who went on the trip over the phone and obviously wanted a recap of the weekend. We all can call this guy Tom. All the guys who were on the trip had agreed not to discuss the last night's extracurricular activities due to the closeness of all of our significant others and the obvious what happens on a bachelor trip stays on a bachelor trip. Is that true, guys?
I think only being on one of those, being my own, I think I understood that fully without having to be explicitly told.
Well,
Ceruti, where did you go? I forget. Did you golf or something?
We went
right? middle of nowhere,
right.
Maine, Millinocket. It was awesome on a lake. Nothing crazy really happened, but I will say, I've told the story of my first ever, I think, bachelor party. It was one of my best buddies, first of us to get married. That was when one of our other buddies lost $22,000. That story was told over and over again. So that did not stay in Vegas or at the bachelor party.
That's too good of a story. So Tom spilled the beans to Mac. I don't know if I like the fake name Mac. I think Mac makes it to this bachelor party no matter what. But
I just keep thinking of It's Always Sunny too.
Yeah, right. Mac shows up. Mac doesn't have other things. But
Mac.
Let's keep it. So Mac, who can't go, talks to Tom, who was there. Tom tells Mac. Mac, not being able to help himself, told his wife. For background,
Jesus.
Mac has a history of not being able to keep a secret and being a gossip whenever he has a juicy scoop. It gets better. All of our significant others were meeting for their monthly book club. It's a tight-knit community at which they seldom discuss literature. Uh-oh. 2 nights after we get back from the trip, Mac's wife proceeds to tell all the other girls what Mac told her about the exact answers. Needless to say, some of them didn't care and some of them cared very, very much. So now we have a friend group where the guys are in varied stages of the doghouse. Mac and Tom are both core guys. I've decided that I'm disappointed in Tom for the lapse in judgment to tell Mac anything, and I'm angry at Mac for lacking any self-control whatsoever. But we need a ruling from the group. How should we handle Mac moving forward? 1, should we ice Mac out and exclude him from all group activities for a while? If so, how long? 2, who is more at fault? Mac for telling his wife or Tom who told Mac? Number 3, what would you all do in this situation? Okay, well, one of the core beliefs of my political party is that we need to not change our mind on who to blame, who fucked up the most. Like, hey, here's the person that we can blame the most, like the person whose car is broken into. And the first thing of somebody saying, well, why did you park there? You're like, okay, well, we have no room for you in my party. So what I would say here is that clearly Tom screwed up, but Max screwed up the most. And I know that there'll be responses that'll say, well, Tom should have known. No, Mac told his wife. Tom told a dude. Case closed.
Yeah, I was thinking it's, jokes forever. That's my go-to. But I think maybe this calls for like a fantasy football last place style punishment for our boy Mac. I think that's what it is. Like, we're not ready until you atone. And
we got to hang out at Arby's for 24 hours.
No, I think it's got to be a little shittier than that. I don't know what it is.
Shitty.
It is pretty shitty, but I mean,
not really. Arby's is amazing.
It's true. They have the meats.
The Hollywood one just closed. I mean, rest in peace.
Yeah, Arby's is great for the record.
Yeah, I think maybe you put your heads together and figure out some sort of atonement. You'll probably feel better about that. You don't want to lose a dude for this, but you do want him to know that he fucked up, and you maybe need him to feel it a little bit. I think that's better than just, relentlessly joking about any time anyone has any news. Like, well, you better not tell Mac because, I don't know, that'll probably roll off his back. But if you guys can all remember that one time when whatever.
Is the way that he was talking about this, is Mac seems like the kind of guy that does this more often, though. So maybe, are we maybe not giving Tom enough blame? Yeah. So I guess,
sure, be mad at Tom, but Mac's the one that screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think you just got to kind of rag on him for a while. I don't know that there's any formal punishment, but I think it's just he needs to be ridiculed for months and just this is your fault, dude.
I think he's out on Fridays until he pays.
Oh man, that's pretty serious.
I think if you want to come to Fridays, here's what we need you to do.
Well, the question I'd always ask is how cool is Mac in the group? This is a massive flaw. I hate this in the alignment of dudes, where every friend group kind of has the guy that just thinks it's so cool, especially you think back when you're younger. So this is wives and fiancés on the table here, but just the guy that will make the other guys look bad to gain some kind of trust with the females because he doesn't have any other fucking moves.
Yeah,
and I hate
nothing
this
to
guy.
say.
That's usually not really a single guy. That's not a guy who's it's weird. Yeah.
But I feel like there is some kind of code there, especially it's not everybody's going to love this. Hey, you had dancers, there's going to be all these follow-up questions. And hey, there's probably one male group in this friend group now that is going to have a significant other that every time this guy goes on a trip for the next 8 years, she's going to be saying, oh, are there fucking dancers there?
Or whatever. You told me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it leads to all this stuff. Let me see your DMs right now, because maybe she has stuff from her past where she's like, oh my God. And it's always kind of funny too, when you'll have a moment if you're seeing somebody and then it's oh, this whole time you were right in front of me. And then I didn't even realize who you were. And it's no, things aren't working out. Now you're trying to pretend I'm a completely different person and all this other shit.
This is
anyway,
your fault.
This is starting to sound a little too specific. Anyway, so moving on.
Let's get there.
Yeah.
Climbing out of this hole.
So I think there's a 2-tier punishment thing here. But if Mac is cool, if Mac or Tom are really cool, guess what they get to do? They get away with it more than the other guys in the friend group that maybe aren't as cool or aren't as well liked or aren't the other guys in the pecking order of all the dudes. Like, who do you like the most? Who does everybody look up to the most? Who's the one that comes to the door? He's showing up that gets everybody the most excited. And then there are kind of the replaceable people in that group, which may seem like unfair, but that's just the way of the world. And it's how much you're going to get away with it based on your approval rating versus how much another person is going to get away with it based on a much lower approval rating. And it can be the exact same act and somebody can be just worse at it. But there's certain people in your male friend groups that get away with tons of shit, where other guys, it's like, why is this person being held to a completely different standard? So I think the best move would be to have another awesome weekend plan at some point and just not invite him. Tell him, but not invite him. But the problem is, if Mac's the coolest guy in the group, then maybe you won't want to do it. So I think that's what it
sounds like he had a great time without Mac, though.
He can't even be on the podium of the coolest guys because that's a huge flaw right there.
True.
Like, if you can't be trusted with any sort of sensitive information, there's no way you're even getting bronze.
What if he's cool in every other facet of being a guy, though?
How could you be? How could you be?
What if he's like huge arms, pretty good on his feet, lateral quickness? Maybe
lateral quickness. I'll tell you who would love that. Rick Pitino.
Nice.
Deep cut.
You want fantasy football punishments as sort of a one-off? I think an epic weekend planned. Make him part of the planning and then also go, oh, yeah, we forgot you're not invited to this.
Yeah. I like it. I like this even better. The next Friday, you all kind of, like we sit at the table, gets real quiet. Like, we've talked about this. This is going to be your last Friday until we fix this. And here's how we're going to do it. I think that's great. You ambush him there. And it's like, you like this? Because this is going away unless you whatever. I don't know what it is.
Wait, I just thought of a better idea. Next time the women meet up for the book club, tell Mac he has to show up and strip at it. So that way it's humiliating. And anyone that has any back and forth stuff with their wife can be like, it's not like you haven't had male dancers at your gatherings. So now we're even.
Yours wasn't even a bachelorette party.
Yeah. Like, what's this book club about? What are you reading now? Men are from Mars? Women are from Venus?
2 Mulaney's in one episode. Fuck you.
Great spot to end it. Thank you to Kyle. Thank you to Ceruti and Wargon. A reminder also to the audience, we will be on Friday with an episode. We'll be on our YouTube page as well that you can subscribe to. There will be no Thursday podcast because I'm going to be doing stuff with Bill on his pod after the first round, and then we'll kind of see how the rest of the week plays out. Ryen Russillo podcast. Bring her Spotify.